back to the Modern Firm Podcast. Back at you here. Darren, we got lots to talk about today. Coming to me from a much warmer place than I am.
I am, at least for the time being, still. Coming to you from Longboat Key, Florida.
Oh, good for you. 40 here and 80 there.
Yeah.
So if I sound more perturbed than you, that's the reason.
Think about Indiana. It could be 40 and it could be 80 in the same week.
In the same day.
Down
that's
here,
right.
Yeah, down here it's 80, or
You
it could be
figured
85.
out. That's right. Well, speaking of clouds, how about that for a transition?
Oh, nice.
I'm excited today. We got conversation that it feels like is just a continuation of what you and I talk about all the time, and that is technology in firms. And really specifically today, we want to talk about the idea of the cloud and maybe define it a little bit, talk about some exciting trends that we're seeing, and also I might even tell some horror stories about some things going on inside firms I'm talking to right now as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. John, we just finished a white paper that we're getting ready to release, so people can pay attention to that or look forward to that coming out. But one thing that we found in this white paper is, and it was we surveyed about 500 accounting firms.
Yeah.
And, I know sometimes you and I talk about some of the same things more than once. But what we're continuing to find is firms are continuing to lag behind in moving from a technology standpoint and a business model standpoint. They continue to lag behind, and probably some of your horror stories are going to be a result of that lagging.
Yeah, you know how much I care about the people around the firm, and that's really my role is staffing and culture inside of accounting firms, working with leaders to make sure that the culture is healthy. And I've cared about that for a really long time. I do a lot of research, do a lot of writing, a lot of podcasting about it. But the truth is, before you get to a healthy culture, what we're seeing is just this infrastructure problem inside of firms. And I do think, Darren, that it is a direct result of either fear or maybe being overwhelmed in your company has kept you from taking the necessary steps to move to a really intentional and clear way of doing business. And the thing is so frustrating and hard for me at times is that I'm seeing firms whose staff are paying the price, whose clients are paying the price, for a firm who maybe hasn't taken the time to step back and see what's available to them to make their lives and their firms easier to run. And that's why I like this conversation we're about to have today.
Yeah, as you were saying that, I'm sitting there, I have this song playing in my head. Remember, as kids, as we were in church, it would be, built this house on solid rock I stand, right?
Yeah, right. It's been a long time since I sang that song.
Yeah. I would love to hear you sing it. I tell you how good your hair looks today, by the way. Did you just
No kidding.
No,
that's a convenient thing to say on a podcast. So
good point.
Face for radio is what they tell me.
Yeah, you do. No, but there's truth to that in firms that, if you don't have the right foundation, you don't have the right technology infrastructure and the right business model and things. I mean, we're seeing firms really struggling with this continually.
Yeah, and it's something that, Darren, I think it's one thing if you're struggling in a firm because maybe you don't have the budget to deal with the kinds of technologies you need, or maybe because we see firms a lot who are just really, really busy and in the weeds with what they're doing. But man, when it's so available, when it's right at your fingertips, there is this frustration that I have where I'm just like, oh my gosh, just put your head up for a second after tax season. Just look for a minute, because there are so many points of friction inside of your firm that have been proven to be taken care of with some really awesome pieces of technology. So that's why we're here. We want this to be your opportunity to pull your head up and to see some things that maybe you've missed with your head down inside the firm.
Perfect. Let's go.
So, Darren, let's start. I've already thrown that word out there, the cloud, and there's so much baggage. I wish we could call it something else. The word's been around for a really long time, and people thought of it originally as something a mobile device connected to that seamlessly connected data from web to mobile, and of course that's still part of it. But let's just start this conversation by redefining a clear definition of what is the cloud. What are we talking about when we talk about the cloud?
Oh, I mean, I think it's a great question, John, because even my own thinking evolved on this. If you were to ask me this, I don't know, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, I would have thought that every accounting firm would be using browser-based native solutions to solve all their problems inside their firm. So every staff person could just pop open their desktop or their laptop and open a browser or a number of browser tabs, and they were working away and it would all be connected.
Yeah.
Well, the reality of that story is not currently true, and really not even on the horizon to be true as I thought about it. It's actually true, John, just not in the way I thought about it. So now, as we think about the cloud, it is this one space that you log into. It is a desktop, out on somebody else's server, because that's what the cloud is. It's somebody else's server. I mean, it's still running on server somewhere, but it's on somebody else's server, and it's this one space. Whether you're running, tax software, UltraTax, Lacerte, CCH. You're running that in that cloud browser, along with things like QBO and Bill.com and, ADP run payroll. You're running all of those things together in this one space, and your staff has access to that from wherever they are. And that's how I think about the cloud today, as opposed to waiting on, a vendor to create their browser-based version. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think similarly, I used to think of the cloud as this thing that I pushed to and pulled from. Like this thing that I was constantly either pushing a button that said push to the cloud or pulling something down from the cloud. And what I think has changed since you and I used to have that conversation in front of rooms, by the way, and telling them that this is going to change. We didn't foresee how it would change. But I think one of the things that has changed that we just couldn't have foreseen is bandwidth and processing inside of computers, inside of the internet. I'm going to get over my head speaking technically, so I won't go too much farther with that. But because of that, rather than me having to feel like I'm pushing something and then working and then pulling something else down, it's a constant push and pull. It's a constant, basically my hard drive is become a server somewhere, instead of me working locally, pushing for my own safety, pushing somewhere and then pulling down. Now I've just got this constant workflow of an outsourced place to work, one space. And what that's allowed us to do, the implications of being able to work like that are so much farther reaching than we could have ever imagined. When it comes to security, when it comes to being able to deal with the kinds of onboarding and the kinds of connecting of platforms and solutions, this is why it's so exciting, because it is far more reaching than we could have imagined, even 5 years ago, to be honest.
Well, I mean, I think today, John, there's a practicality that clients still use QuickBooks Desktop.
Yeah.
Could be QuickBooks Enterprise. They still do, and lots of them do. Firms still use QuickBooks Enterprise. Again, desktop software.
Yeah.
Firms are still using UltraTax, Lacerte, CCH, Drake, Pro Series. These are not browser-based natively solutions. So what we thought would change hasn't.
Yeah.
And then the second piece of that, what has changed significantly is the security threat of letting your staff do whatever with whatever browser they want on their laptop that they have at home in the office, and lack of security protocols and all this stuff. So those two things have changed significant. One hasn't changed. The other one has changed significantly in the last 5 to 7 years. And that brings us to where we're at today, which is this need to be in a one space environment that is secure, where you can run all your solutions. And we'll talk a little bit more about what it means to curate those solutions, but where you can run all your solutions in essentially a browser-based environment that is your desktop.
Yeah, Darren, let's start with security. Let's start with the implications on security alone. You mentioned it briefly there, but let's dig into what the advantage of one space for all of your solutions and to work in on a daily basis when it comes to cybersecurity.
Well, I mean, I think there's I think the first thing, John, is with security is knowing what is running in your environment.
Yeah.
So if you think about, I don't know, let's just use QuickBooks Online as an example. And I open my laptop and I'm running QuickBooks Online on my laptop, connected to essentially, I mean, it is my laptop, even though I'm connected to Intuit out in the cloud. If somebody's compromised my laptop or I have a staff person who downloads some things on their laptop and now they're getting into QBO, all those things present today security threats for the firm. So I think just having control of your environment. Yeah. When you log into, what we call one space, into that environment, the firm has already curated what tools a staff person can have access to. So I think by definition, they've lowered their security risk profile by, staff people can't just decide they're going to download this, download that, and put it, in that virtual desktop, because the firm's already decided what tools are going to be in there. And then secondly, to have a world-class data center monitoring the security threats, because I tell you what, a staff person is going to click on a bad email, even if they're in that environment. It's going to happen, right? In a one-space environment even. And the question is it being monitored by security professionals on the other end of that who can quickly, take care of whatever the issue happens to be? I think in and of itself, those two things, curating your tech stack and having somebody monitoring your systems 24/7 is really a huge security win today.
Darren, I was on a coaching call with just a wonderful person on from a firm out west last week, and I pulled up and comes up on Zoom, and it's not her, it's her 4-year-old son. And he's just looking at me. This is the weirdest thing. And I'm like, it's almost like the old days where you're like, did I dial the wrong number? But like this kid's just looking at me and he goes, Mom. And so she comes running and she goes, oh my goodness. So she sits down and she's like, well, we share this computer. He plays games, and he's like, oh my gosh, this 5-year-old kid is on Discord and playing video games and has got, Cheerios all over the screen. And this also is got hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars worth of tax information and social security numbers and everything right here. And I think, when that computer was in an office somewhere, the firm owner was a little bit more justified in pretending that it was safe. But the fact that now you can take that computer anywhere and anybody could have access to it, and it can be on an internet, on a network, on a Wi-Fi network with lots of different endpoints and lots of different security measures. We have got to standardize the way we think about what happens on these machines when our employees are operating. And this, to me, I don't think there's any better way of knowing what's happening inside of one space than a cloud solution like this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the top concern that all firms ought to be looking at is their security risk profile. Yeah. And, sadly, too many firms, one, are not paying attention to it. Two, don't want to spend the money to have their systems monitored, taken care of, professionally managed. And it's not a problem for them until it's a problem. And then when it's a problem, it's like, crap, right? You can't put that back in the box when it's a problem.
Absolutely.
And so I think it's the first thing that firms should be thinking about is how do I best secure this information? I think that's number one. Yeah.
So secondly, for me, it's something that I see on a regular basis, and that's this inconsistency and kind of chaos around onboarding and offboarding of new employees, or offboarding an employee. I just talked to a firm. I was telling you about this before we started recording. Something in a range of, in the last 18 months, they've been through 15, 16 employees. This is a firm of less than 20 people. So you can imagine just what that does to your work, what that does. And they're calling me because they have a culture problem. I'm glad they recognize that. But as we start talking about that, we start thinking about like how many, they were mentioning 3 or 4 of those employees are disgruntled, which is a different problem. But if you let a disgruntled employee walk away from your firm without an offboarding process, without a way of making sure that they don't have the access they had before they left, without absolutely being sure for your client's sake of who has access to your stuff, you are missing what it means to be to have a firm with integrity when it comes to your clients right now. And that onboarding, offboarding process is so baked into the idea of a cloud to be able to create this consistency and a one space for people to be able to log in and work is really drastically changing the operation of your firm.
Well, let's kind of walk through the process, John, a second of onboarding a staff person.
Yeah.
So in a world that hasn't, or in a firm that hasn't really thought this all the way through, chances are they provision a machine, desktop, laptop, maybe both. And now that new employee needs access to arguably probably 25 different solutions.
Some more.
Office 365, they've got to get into wherever you have your tax software or your QuickBooks files. That could be locally. You could be using a cloud provider that only hosts a few things. And then you also have that employee getting into probably your payroll solution, maybe in a browser, QuickBooks Online, maybe Bill.com, go through the list of solutions. So in a firm like this, you're probably providing, passwords to 20, 25, 30 different solutions to get somebody onboarded. And then to get that person productive, let's say they're a client, a bookkeeper or something along that line, they need access to each of those clients. Right. And then there's passwords to all the client accounts, whether that's Chase Bank or American Express or Visa or QuickBooks Online. There's all those passwords. So onboarding in that environment is a significant challenge. And then as I mentioned earlier, that employee could download any host of solutions. Maybe they used at another firm. Maybe they use T-Value or they use something else. And so now they want to get these productivity tools, that have not been firm approved, so to speak. So that's the challenge of onboarding, is getting somebody up and going with all those different passwords, all those different solutions. If you look at how a professionally managed firm, I think, would do this, there is this one space environment where the firm owner or the firm has curated what tools the firm is going to use. So there's no going over to QuickBooks Online or over to Bill.com or over to, a tool like UltraTax and Virtual Office, all these different places with all these different passwords. You come into a single platform environment like OneSpace, and there's single sign-on solutions that will get your employees into all the right solutions that have been provisioned.
Mm-hmm.
And so all you have to do is give that new employee one password to get up and get going.
Life-changing.
Well, I mean, just look at those two scenarios.
Yeah.
And then you think about, okay, that employee now has left. In your example where they turned over, I don't know, whatever you said, 14 people or so. When they leave, you've got to make sure they're out of 25 different solutions, plus all of their different clients. So single sign-on is game-changing in one platform that's been curated. I can't say enough about this because this is where risk is really created inside of accounting firms, and inefficiencies and client dissatisfaction. Go through the list of things.
Yeah. I mean, Darren, we've mentioned security and onboarding, and that's enough to really drastically change the friction
Onboarding
inside
and
a firm.
offboarding, yeah.
Onboarding, offboarding, security are just huge to this conversation. But then the next phase of this that I absolutely see changing the way firms operate is in client collaboration. I was thinking the other day, the modern way that I interact with a company. My family is so busy. I'm in that stage of life where we just want things to be easy. So we go to Chipotle every time we can because I can do everything I need to do with Chipotle on an app, literally everything. But I drive up to the window, they ask me my name, and I grab the bag. I order on the app, I pay on the app. Everything is communicating with this business without
Frictionless,
going through
no friction.
And the less friction you have, the more chance I have of working with you regularly, and the more chance you have of selling me something over and over and over again. And we have got to think of client experience in a modern way like that, because it's what your clients are expecting.
Well, unfortunately, again, in the survey we did 500 firms,
Yeah.
in this white paper we're putting out says, I'm going to get the facts wrong here, but I'm going to be close. So, it's like 16% of firms have more than 75% of their clients collaborating with them in a frictionless sort of way. So a cloud environment is what the survey said. So to me, when I saw those results, what it sort of said to me was that firms just don't have time. They're not paying enough attention. Clients don't know exactly what to do. I mean, you just think about people that are still giving you QuickBooks backup files, or, not collaborating in real time, with their accounting system or their payroll system or whatever those things are, or communicating with you in real time in some sort of way. That's the state of the profession right now. And I don't believe it's because it's not that they think they shouldn't be. I think they're so busy caught up in the day-to-day that they're not spending a lot of time like engaging with clients and teaching them how to work more effectively. Now, the thing with Chipotle, they made it so easy they didn't have to reach out and teach you.
Yeah.
So, you figured that out on your own, right?
Yeah.
And you figured out that it was an awesome way to communicate and to work with them. It's, there's a little bit more of a hurdle working with clients in an accounting firm, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't go down that path. And,
Absolutely.
Roughly 16% is that have over 75%, collaboratively working with them is a dismally low percentage.
And what's funny is that's according to the accounting firms. If you pulled Arby's, they would probably tell you that their experience is frictionless, but they didn't ask me because I would have compared it to Chipotle. And,
Yeah.
if so, I mean, I think that number is even smaller when you think about whether your customers are actually getting what they expect from a customer experience. And,
Yeah.
I love, we keep using this analogy that, that accounting firms are distracted by the everyday, by the mundane, by the do it again today, kind of head down in the weeds, too distracted to see the truth of what needs to change in their firm. And I think the thing that I am probably most passionate about when it comes to moving to the cloud for firms is the idea of being able to simplify what goes on in their office. So if we take all the complications around security, you take all of the complications around onboarding and offboarding, all the complications around client collaboration, and at the same time, we all know we have to get simpler. The more convoluted we get with our customer experience, with our team experience, with our security experience, the more opportunity we leave for problems and issues. And so we have to get simpler. And I think the thing about moving to the cloud is the idea of simplifying. It's removing that 25, 28, 33 solutions that I have in my firm and simplifying, creating a more simple way to work.
Yeah, I think if you look at all the great companies today, John, they've done a really good job of removing as much friction as possible in the process.
Yeah.
They have somebody internally who gets up every day thinking about how do I remove friction inside my organization or with with the customers.
Yep.
And I think that's where accounting firms have to get. I think that's what you mean by simpler, is just removing an easier firm to run, take more variables out of the equation, make it less friction for your staff is probably the most important people to have less friction for. I mean, I know you'd think I would say the client, but today every accounting firm is as busy as they can possibly be, and they're probably turning clients away. And clients are important, but staff are even more important today, because back to your example of 14 people turning over, I mean, that's a problem. That is a problem.
It impacts everything. And I think, as we kind of bring this thing to a close, the reason that a conversation about the cloud makes it onto a podcast where we talk about a modern firm is because in the long run, we have to leverage everything at our disposal to prioritize our two most valuable assets. And that's our client list and our staff. And maybe the opposite order. Maybe our staff comes before our clients, but either way, we have to prioritize the human beings around our processes. And to me, what moving to the cloud does is it provides us this opportunity for everyone to see everything in one place, in one space, and it unifies our customers and our team, and it gives us this deep breath to remove variables. Hopefully we've kind of communicated the passion for that today. There's a whole lot more stories out there. And maybe you've got some to add to it today. It's time to simplify, and it's time to bring our heads up and leverage the technology that's right in front of us.
Good job, John. Thanks.
Good conversation. Thanks for joining us on the Modern Firm podcast. Hope you heard something today that moves you forward, that helps prioritize your clients and your team. Until next time.